The Lord be with you. And welcome to all of you who are visiting today. We are so glad to have you. I encourage all you Hope students to, after chapel, turn around, greet someone who is a new face, and point them in the direction that they need to go. And then, lastly, I want to acknowledge that today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This is a day to celebrate the work and life of a really remarkable man whose aims were gospel aims, whose aims have not yet been achieved, but we're still working toward that in hope. We'll hear more about that in the passage and the sermon this morning, but I want to invite you to a lecture tonight, right back here in Dimnant, at 7 o'clock, honoring him. So we hope you will come back for that this evening. All right, today we are hearing from Acts chapter 12. It's a passage that's both tragic and comic. And the comic part is really very funny if you kind of loosen up and let yourself laugh at it. And I'll try to read it in a way that you can hear the humor in it. And the tragic parts are really sobering and can cause us to despair if we don't circle back around and kind of look at them in the light of the comedy. So listen with me to Acts chapter 12. About that time, King Herod laid violent hands upon some who belonged to the church. He had James, the brother of John, killed by the sword. After he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the festival of unleavened bread. When he had seized him, he put him in prison and handed him over to 4 squads, 16 soldiers, to guard him, intending to bring him out to the people after the Passover. While Peter was in prison, the church prayed fervently to God for him. The very night before Herod was going to bring him out, Peter, bound with 2 chains, was sleeping between 2 soldiers while guards in front of the door were keeping watch over the prison. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He hit Peter on the side and woke him, saying, "Get up, quickly." And the chains fell off his wrists. The angel said to him, "Fasten your belt and put on your sandals." He did so. Then he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." Peter went out and followed him. He did not realize that what was happening with the angel's help was real. He thought he was seeing a vision. After they had passed the first and the second guard, they came before an iron gate leading into the city. It opened for them of its own accord, and they went outside and walked along a lane when suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hands of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting." As soon as he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many had gathered and were praying. When he knocked at the outer gate, a maid named Rhoda came to answer. On recognizing Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the gate, she ran back in and announced that Peter was standing at the gate. They said to her, "You are out of your mind." But she insisted that it was so. They said, "It's his angel." Meanwhile, Peter continued knocking, and when they opened the gate, they saw him and were amazed. He motioned to them with his hand to be silent and described for them how the Lord had brought him out of prison. And he added, "Tell this to James and to the believers." Then he left and went to another place. This is the word of the Lord. So much of this story is a comedy. Peter is in prison, surrounded by all of these guards. An angel comes. The NRSV says it taps him, but the Greek says the angel hits him to shake him awake. He lets him out of prison. So Peter heads over to Mary's house, where all of the believers are gathered to pray. And Rhoda, the maid, when she answers the gate, is so excited and surprised at Peter's presence that she just leaves him, this wanted man, standing on the street, while she goes and runs back in to tell the other believers. And they don't believe her. They call her insane. She insists that it's really Peter. And they say something like, oh, that's just his guardian angel, or that's just his ghost. They don't believe that it's really Peter. And then when they finally do answer the gate, they see that it is indeed Peter, that he really was standing there. There's a kind of comic irony in this story. The same believers who are gathered to pray for Peter's release, the ones who are supposedly the most faithful, are the ones who don't believe it when Peter actually is released, when their prayer is answered. The faithful ones actually don't have faith. And there's a tragic irony here, too, because those same believers who prayed so fervently for Peter's release also prayed for James. And James was killed. Peter's story is lighthearted and funny. There's a kind of comic relief in this otherwise really desperate story. But the story of James doesn't have that relief or that hope. The story of James makes us kind of wonder, why is it even worth our time to pray if there's not a promise to end like Peter, but one like James? So I think it's important for us to remember the deeper meaning of the word comedy. If any of you have taken Shakespeare with Dr. Cox here, or maybe in high school, you've probably learned that Shakespeare's comedies were funny, yes, often, but that wasn't why they were called comedies. They were called comedies because, in the end, all of the complicated relationships were sorted out, people got paired up, got married, the bad guys, they got their end, and everything ended well. Comedy is a comedy because, as Julian of Norwich says, all will be well, and all will be well, and you shall see that every kind of thing will be well. In the end, the gospel promises that all will be well. But still, James died, and we're not privy to God's reasons for that. Dr. King died, was killed, and we're not privy to God's reasons for that. But we do have this deep belief that God is folding those tragedies into his cosmic comedy, where everything will, in the end, be well. And eventually Peter died too, and we will too. That's just part and parcel of life east of Eden. No one is spared. Tragedy touches each of us. Tragedy touches everything. But the thing of it is that God's great comedy also permeates all things. And not just in this kind of sporadic comedic relief, these little bursts of humor, although sometimes life does make us laugh. And there are things about the gospel that are just outright funny to those of us who understand what the gospel is. But deeper than that, there's this undercurrent of hilarity, this big joke that God's got the last laugh. And the reason that we keep on praying is because we want in on that laughter. We want in on that joke where the bad guys get their end and everything is set right. And so we keep on praying audacious prayers, faithful prayers over and over because we get God's sense of humor. We understand what he's doing, and we lean into that comedy. We trust that the gospel promise will come to be, that all will be well. And in those moments when it seems like it won't come to be, we mourn the tragedy. We mourn the death of James, and we mourn the death of Dr. King, and we mourn our own failure to achieve that racial reconciliation. We mourn sin and evil and death. And yet we keep praying. We keep leaning into that great cosmic comedy where God will make all things well. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, go in peace.